Everyone. I am glad for you guys joining us. Wanted to make sure that we were live because that would be my luck today. Um, I am joined by the amazing Maxwell Ivy, the guy who's given me some awesome ideas, and he's going to share with you guys some content about how you can get your message out there by leveraging other people's audience. And I think that's what the power of using podcasts and radio shows is, and that is leveraging other people's audience. Before we get into it, though, I want to give you a quick introduction to Mr. Ivy. You can't see my face. Can you see my face now there, Frederick? Let me know, please. Thanks for joining us, by the way. Yeah, that's the problem that we have with blind people, is that often you can't see the faces. Oh, Max. There we go. Awesome. Glad you can see my face. So let me give you a quick introduction to Max. Max has been on my podcast, the Your Own Pay podcast, twice now. I'm excited about that. And now we're taking it to the next level using a great platform that I'll let everyone know is making accessibility improvements and is listening. What we just did used to not be possible. So Max is internationally known as the blind blogger. He's all about building relationships and connections with people, and he's giving me ideas and the world ideas for ways that they can change what they're doing in business and how they're handling everything and how they're handling the message that they're getting out there and sharing with others. Max is here today to share with you the message, to share with you his message about how he can help you with coaching and about how he can help you with getting your message on by coaching you to get you interviewed on other people's podcasts. Sorry about that horrid interview, Max. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, and I appreciate you for joining us. And let's go ahead and get into it. What do you want to talk about with the audience today?
Well, we're going to talk about a lot of things having to do with using podcasts and radio shows. As I tell people in the beginning, if you don't have your own audience, borrow or steal somebody else's. So that's what we're going to talk about. And as far as your introduction, it wasn't the greatest, but I've been doing this long enough that the introduction isn't going to affect the message or the conversation that we have today or what we're able to do to help others use podcasts and radio shows. However, if this had happened 4 years ago when I did my first radio show, it probably would have been a whole lot different effect on me. And one of the things I tell people to do is write your own introduction. Pretend that you're giving it, or somebody that you would like to have introduce you on TV or radio is giving that introduction, because that's a good way to get clear on what your story is and why people should have you on podcasts. And I guess maybe I'll tell that story. The first time I ever did an interview, I was promoting the Midway Marketplace, where I still help people buy and sell amusement equipment. A guy named Brian the Hammer Jackson put out an open invitation on LinkedIn for people wanting to come on his show and talk about their small businesses. So I replied, I said, sure, I'll do that. For some reason, I didn't think about being interviewed or being on radio or how many people would be listening. I just thought this might be a cool way to promote my business. And at that time, I had lots of passion and energy and no cash. So I was really open to doing this thing. We exchanged some emails. I agreed to go on the call. I went out to my garage because it was the only place I could be assured of having privacy and not being interrupted. It was January, so it was kind of cold out there. I'm standing out there with my flip phone from Sprint, and the guy comes to me and my phone drops the call. And I'm trying to call him back. He's trying to call me back. We finally get on the phone again together, and he goes, hey, what is your problem? Are you blind or something? To which I say, yeah, sure I am. And apparently his producer either didn't tell him or told him 3 or 4 times, and he never got it into his brain that he was going to have a blind caller. So we had about 15, 30 seconds of silence, which is death in radio or television. And then I laughed about it, and then he started laughing about it. And then we had about, another 15, 20 minutes. We had a great conversation about the Midway Marketplace. He invited me to come back the next Friday. And I eventually did his show every Friday morning for about 6 months before I realized that there were other shows I could be doing. And so it's one of those perfect examples of how it was a horrible introduction. It was a horrible call. but it turned out to be a great thing because, I got past this whole experience, and really how much worse could go wrong than went wrong on my first call. And yet people actually sent me emails after that call. They visited my website. I had one of the best weeks of traffic ever for the Midway Marketplace site. And so it led me to remember one important thing about doing these interviews, and that is you can have a horrible interview and still have a great effect. You can still reach that one person who decided to listen regardless, or who heard a few words of what you had to say and thought, that person really gets me. And your message, or the way you presented your message, managed to have them make a big breakthrough aha moment. So I just want to tell that story because I know a lot of people are scared of doing interviews, whether they be blogs, podcasts, radio, whatever. And I think it's important to remember that while I may be really good at this now, once upon a time I stunk out loud at it, okay? So the question is, why do y'all want to do podcasts or radio show interviews? And the real reason is it's one of the best ways I know to make a connection, to get one-on-one with another person and with their audience and make an impression, be able to have an intimate, personal, in-depth conversation that just happens to be being listened to by hundreds of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands of people. So you get to talk, you get to share your story, you get to talk about your experiences, you get to mention your book, you can talk about your writing process, your music process, you can talk about a course that you're wanting to promote. You can share your childhood, your recent tragedy. I've even recently on an interview talked about losing my favorite buddy Penny. So,
hey Max.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I want to ask the participants that we have here in the chat, because this is live, so we can get some engagement here from you guys. What would having 100,000 people or even 10,000 people hearing what you do and how you impact lives, what would that do for your business or what you're working on? Feel free to let us know in the chat. Max can go on with the story, but I'd be interested to hear what other people have to say about that, because that's something you need to think about, is how is that going to impact you when you learn how to be able to do this?
Yeah, and it's a good question. I mean, if we all, most of the people that are listening right now, I know you have a message, you have a story, you have something important to share, and the question is, how do you get people to listen to you? And so one of the great things about podcasts and radio shows is there are literally hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of people who have shows out there around the world. And they're all looking for quality guests. They're looking for somebody that will come on their show and inspire, motivate, educate, entertain, or uplift their audience. And most of them get up every morning praying that somebody is going to come into their inbox and go, hey, you got to have me on your show. So I know it may be counterintuitive to what I'm trying to do here, but I've only been turned down maybe 10 or 12 times in 4 years of doing this. And it usually was because I was pitching an international show like Entrepreneur on Fire or something like that, where I really didn't expect to get accepted, but I still pitched them anyway. In most cases, there are shows out there with 50,000 listeners, with 200,000 listeners, with YouTube followings in the thousands, who will love to have you on their show and who are just waiting for you to ask them. So I tell people all the time, don't be afraid to stick your hand up and say, hey, you need to have me on your show, because you need to be on their shows. You need to get in front of their audiences, and they need you on their shows. They need quality guests every day, every week, every month. And the more times a week they have their show on the air, the more guests they need to fill that time. So the best people to approach are people who are doing 5 shows a week. David Rafe, Mark Mawhinney, those are a couple of names off the top of my head. Great guys who have great shows and do wonderful interviews. They're doing 3, 4, 5 shows a week. So they are constantly searching for people to have on their shows. And just a little bit about how you find shows, because Mike said he was going to ask me that. There are email lists you can subscribe to, and I'm going to mention one here because everybody already knows about it, and that's radioguestlist.com. I've used it. I don't really care for it so much anymore because everybody knows about it, and by the time you send a pitch to somebody that's posted on that list, there are already 375 people who have also sent them an email. So there are other lists you can subscribe to. There are some new websites coming online that you can join. And but the best way is to go through what are called syndication sites, which are places where people post their podcasts and radio shows. so that people can find them, like iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean, Podomatic. There are lots of Blog Talk Radio has their own search engine, and you can go through these places and look by genre, look by type of show, and then you can generally find out how many listeners they have, how many followers they have, how many shows they've done, what kind of audience they're getting, what kind of show they do. And of course, you can listen to a couple of episodes just to make sure that that show would be a good fit for you. So that's just a little bit about how you find the shows. Today, I wanted to talk more about what goes into pitching a show and what I think are the four main ingredients into successfully pitching another podcast or radio show. But before I do that, did we get any response to your question, Michael?
The only response we got was saying that it would be amazing to get the message out, and it is. Before we get into it, can you tell us some of the experiences that you've had from sharing your story, and then we can get into those four topics?
Well, as far as experience, I recently had a woman who listened to my podcast interview and wrote and told me that part of her was inspired and part of her felt like maybe she wasn't doing enough with her life because she heard about all the things that I have done. I've had a lot of people who have either visited my author page or my website, or who have actually bought copies of the book. One of the best things that's happened to me as far as podcast interviews have been other opportunities that I've gotten to share my story and promote my book. Like, I did Alex Akorji's podcast a couple years ago, and she later invited me for her anniversary show, and then she invited me for a summit that was, got huge people that attended it online. I did, Yolandi V. Argent's show last year, and she has since invited me to do a summit where I talked about virtual publishing, and then she's also invited me to be part of her cruise retreat next year. So, and even, next week I'm doing that speech in New Jersey for DreamCon. That all started because I was on the Dreamers podcast last year, and when the host started making a list of people he wanted to have at his event, I was one of the names that he remembered from the show. So, yes, you make the impact on people, but I think the best thing or the most immediate thing that has happened has been all the relationships with past hosts that I have made, who continue to promote my blog posts and my content on their social media platforms, who invite me to do other projects with them, and who are, they refer guests to me, they refer me to other shows, because I think a lot of people feel like, I do a show, it's one and done, it's over with, I never talk to that person again. But I would say over half the people I've been on shows with, we have continued to exchange emails, and we've, recommended guests to each other or participated in supporting each other's projects. And I think that's a lot of where it is. You build those relationships with hosts, with their audience, with even some of their casual listeners.
Awesome. And you don't think about that. Now, Max, I found my radio show. Or my podcast. What's the first step? And I'll let you go from there.
Okay. The first step, I guess this is like step A1 because it comes before the other three, is you have to have the mindset that they want to have you on their show. You can't be afraid to send out that pitch email. I know a lot of people are going to think, hey, I don't have a website, or my website isn't good enough yet. I haven't written the book yet. I haven't recorded the course. There's so many things I need to do before I'll be ready to go on another person's show, but that's totally the wrong way around. You need to be going on these shows and building up your platform or your audience long before you ever actually publish your work, be it a blog post, a book, music, album, whatever. You want to be building up these relationships and this network and this audience before you get ready to try to put something out there. So the first thing is don't be so concentrated on what you don't have. Don't let perfectionism keep you from pressing send. So that's the first thing, is you got to get past that mindset that I'm not ready, or I'm not good enough, or they don't want to hear what I have to say, or their audience won't want to hear what I have to say. Because trust me, there will be at least one person that not only wants to hear what you have to say, they need to hear what you have to say, and they need to hear it the way you can always say it. So that's the first thing, is get past the mindset that you're not ready, because first off, you'll never be ready, and second, if you wait until you're ready, then it'll be too late for you. You need to get this out there before you start selling your product or start producing your content. So after that, the three things that everybody needs is you need a media kit page, you need an As Seen Online or a brag page or somewhere where they can check out your past appearances, and you need a basic pitch email, because you do not want to have to write a brand new email every time. You want a basic template that you can go to and change the name, maybe add in a few comments reflective of the show, and go from there. So I'm going to go to the As Seen Online section first, because I think this is going to worry a lot of people more, especially people who have never done a show or have only done a few of them. And that is, the As Seen Online doesn't have to have a lot of stuff. It doesn't even have to have podcast or radio interviews. All it has to have is some things that maybe you have done. Maybe you wrote a blog post that you're especially happy about. Maybe you were asked to write a guest post for somebody. Maybe you can get a friend of yours to interview you and do a mock interview, upload that to your website, and put that on your As Seen Online page. One of the things I do for my clients is I guarantee that I will record their first podcast, or let's call it YouTube interview, since I'm now doing them in video too. So as part of their package, I will do their first interview to make sure they have at least one full-length, hour-long interview that shows off what kind of guests they're going to be and what kind of story they are going to have to share. Because as we both know, Michael, it's all about what story you have and being able to tell it. And so some people need, some people need practice with that. And some people are just scared that if they don't have some stuff on that they can point hosts to, that the host or their producer will decide not to have them on their show. Okay, I thought you wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you, and I hit the wrong thing.
All right. So, like I say, the As Seen Online page, it doesn't have to be interviews. It doesn't even have to be great interviews. I mean, say you did 50. A lot of shows are doing like series of 15-minute interviews where they're back to back to back. Something like that is good. Some websites now, like Awesome Gang is a site I like, are offering people a way to do these free pre-programmed text interviews where you answer a bunch of questions with open-ended long answers. Something like that. If you were featured in another person's blog, like a roundup post, or one of those posts where somebody says the 20 top bloggers you need to check out in 2017. Stuff like that. Be creative and try to think of anything you've done that you can say, that you can put out there so that people can get an idea of who you are and what kind of person they can expect to have on their show. And you can always put at the bottom of your As Seen Online page that you are open to doing a test interview or a pre-interview, so that they can ask you a few questions and get to know you before they make a decision. That's always a good way of getting around a thin As Seen Online page, or having no previous experience at all. Is just tell them, hey, I know I have a good story to share, and I really I want the opportunities to get my message out there. And if you need to interview me before you interview me, that's perfectly fine with me. So that's the As Seen Online page. On mine, it's in reverse order from oldest to newest, so they can always look at the newest first, but I do not remove any past interviews unless the website has gone out of business or the link is broken, because nobody wants broken links on their website, as I'm sure you know, Michael, as a webmaster yourself. And the reason for that is I want people to be able to see my progression. I want them to see how I've grown as a person and as an interview guest. So don't be afraid to put the interviews where you think you stunk, because those tell people stuff about you that they can't learn any other way. And that's the As Seen Online part. The media kit part, in my opinion, I think there's three main sections to a good media kit page. First, you need 3 bios. You need a short, medium, and full length. The short one's usually about 50 to 100 words. The medium is usually 100 to 250 words. And the long one is usually much, much longer. The long one will generally include links to other pages or other sites if that's what you want to offer. A couple of things that I prefer to put in a media kit, and I will mention in full disclosure here that I got these ideas from Lorraine Regularly at wordingwell.com, who's the editor of my books and has edited some of my better blog posts as well. Two things that she recommended, one we did, one we didn't. The one thing she recommended that we did is we came up with 5 fun facts about Max Ivy that people could read. And the interesting thing about that is 2 of those 5 fun facts have led to interview questions, or they've led to me getting booked. While my buddy Penny has passed on, she's still mentioned on my page because I'm not exactly sure how to take her off the page. But the fact that I mentioned that I've got this mindfulness and writing partner named Penny, who is a Gray Mason dog, has caused curiosity among a few people that weren't sure whether or not they wanted to book me. So they booked me because they could find out about Penny. Also, I've had about 15 shows where one of the things they wanted to do, they either asked me in advance or they sprung it on me by surprise, is they wanted me to sing, because it mentions on there that I love to sing. And so people thought, why not ask him if he wants to sing live on our show? And I surprised them and myself by actually doing it. So when you come up with these 5 fun facts, don't be afraid. These are personal things that will make people wonder about you. Curiosity is a really good thing when you're trying to get booked. So it'll make them wonder, so if you're into art, if you're into painting, if you record music, if you've written poetry, if you're an aspiring writer, if there's just whatever you do in your life outside of all the stuff you call work, put that stuff down there, because it could be something that a host will want to have you on their show, just so they can, after they do the meat of the interview, ask about these personal things. And of course, the listeners and the viewers, they want to know that you're a real person. So they like also having these personal facts that will be discussed at some point in the interview, given enough time. And then the one thing she recommended we didn't do, because I personally prefer a free-flowing interview. I like the interview host to take us wherever we will go. She suggested having 5 or 10 suggested questions that I wanted the host to ask me. And like I said, I didn't want to do this, but what subjects you're comfortable talking about. It can tell them what your fields of interest are. It can also make it easier on them, because they don't have to spend so much time reading your profile, going to your website or your blog, asking you questions beforehand or during the interview to find out where they need to take the interview questions. So that can be another way of you giving them a way to get to know you without having to have that pre-call, or without you having to have a bunch of past interviews for them to point to. So I recommend, especially for people who haven't done a lot of interviews, to have 5 to 10 suggested questions that you put on there for people who are considering having you on their show. Now, if you're an author, you're a musician, you've done some sort of creative work, always offer the host the opportunity to read, watch, view, or listen to your work prior to doing the interview. Because 1, it helps them do the interview. 2, it will make them more likely to book you if they can check out your work. Very few people are going to read your book and then not want to have you on their show. There would be some guilt involved for most hosts. Only the most well-established professional people making money from their podcasts, or excuse me, people making lots of money from their podcasts, would have a problem reading your book or watching your movie and then telling you, no, I don't want you on my show. So that's why, if you've done something creative, and something I'm going to start doing on my podcast, so if you consider pitching me at What's Your Excuse, I have figured out how to include people's audio and video in my interviews. So like if you gave a exhibition, or there was a live tour of your work, or you performed live somewhere, or you got videos on YouTube, you can send those links to the host as part of your pitch email, or as part of a follow-up email to your pitch email. And in my case, I am very happy to include those, and I will be including them, because even though it's a little more work, it's a lot more fun. It keeps people more engaged, and it makes a better interview. So that is the Media Kit page. You need 3 bios, short, medium, and long. You need a couple different photos. One that's a professional. It doesn't have to be a glamour shot or headshot quality, but it needs to be a good high-resolution photo of you that's professional. And then a second one would be a good thing to have a photo of you that's a more playful, personal, family-type photo. I understand if people don't want photos that show their kids because that can be dangerous nowadays, but just something that shows you more relaxed and less professional in that second photo that would be further down the page on your Media Kit. And then your 5 fun facts and your 5 to 10 suggested questions. So that's as seen online and the Media Kit page. How am I doing so far on time, Mike? I don't want to be going too fast or too slow. So how are we doing?
You're doing amazing. We're 26 after the hour.
All right. I'm doing great then. I like that. I hope y'all don't mind me asking, but one of the things I do is whenever I'm doing an interview, webinar, or speech, whatever, I get totally immersed in the moment. I have no way of knowing what time it is, what day it is, or if a thunderstorm comes up outside, I'm not going to know it, okay? So the third thing you need is you need a basic pitch email. And like I said, nobody wants to have to write the thing over and over again. I have openly admitted this in interviews, so I'm not telling you anything I'm ashamed of or that other people don't know. I do copy and paste a lot. And then after I copy and paste, I add a few extra sentences that make reference to the show host's name or the name of his show, or maybe I've listened to a couple episodes and I make a reference to a guest he had. For example, recently I was listening to a guy who calls his show The Shark. He's from the UK. He had a guest on with him. Her name was Mel Elliott, and she was amazing, and I told him I was going to steal her from him. She talked about how she checks her email first thing in the morning out of bed, and he talked about how that just totally made him cringe because he's one of the new group of coaches who believes that the worst thing you can do is check your email first thing out of bed. And I mentioned that in an email to him because I knew it showed I had been watching his show and that I enjoyed his show and paid attention. And it was just, a couple of extra lines added to my basic pitch email. And that really made an impression on him because it wasn't something he was expecting. And of course, that's one thing you need to remember in this internet online world. If you can do something they're not expecting, you will stand out. And that always helps you get booked. So let's talk about the basic pitch email. No matter how many of them you're sending, always change it from hello to include the name of the host or the name of the producer. Take the extra 30 seconds to make sure you know who's actually answering the emails and that it's addressed to that person. Second, you want a short opening paragraph that tells them who you are and what your story is as quickly as possible. For example, mine starts off with, hello, I'm Maxwell Ivy. I'm a totally blind business owner, blogger, podcaster, self-published author, and I've also lost over 250 pounds from gastric surgery. Then I go in to tell them below that, just in case they're still reading, which most of them are. After that, I go into more detail about how I started the business of Midway Marketplace after my dad's death caused the closure of our family carnival. And I put a link to the Midway Marketplace, so if they want to go check that out, they can. Then after that, I talked to them about how people told me I was inspirational and they wanted me to share more about being the blind blogger. So I tell them that, and then I include that link. I talked to them about the book, Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light, A Blind Man's Inspirational Guide to Success, and how I wanted it to be different by including my email address, and I mentioned that. Then after that, I tell them about It's Not the Cookie. And then I tell them about the trip to New York and the new book. And then finally, I talk to them about being host of What's Your Excuse. Now, I know y'all are going to say, Max, that's a long, 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 long email. And yes, it is. But the point is, the first part of the email is less than 50 words. It might be 75 words. I haven't counted it recently. It's short enough where they can tell right away who I am, what my story is, and why they might want to have me on their show. And if I catch them in that first paragraph, then they're going to want to read more about me. They're going to want to know more about Max Ivy, the blind blogger, Mr. Midway, What's Your Excuse? And so that's what you've got to do. You want to have an email that in that first paragraph, you just get straight to it as far as who you are and why they want you on their show. And you want to make your as much about your story as possible in as few words as possible. And then after that, you get the opportunity to tell them more about who you are, include links, add photos if you want to. I send out so many emails that I don't generally take the time to add photos anymore, but photos are great in email, especially if you do one or two things. Either compress them so the images are kind of small, say 320 by 240, or if you link to your photo from your website so that when they answer the email size isn't too big or overly big for their mail program because you've got photos in there. So that's another way you can get around that, is by having links to photos you want to use in your emails and just copying or pasting that link into your basic pitch email, because people like to see photos. They like to get to know you. They like to think, hey, I know that guy, or I could know that guy or that girl. So those are the things I have. I have a short opening paragraph. I have multiple longer paragraphs below that answer questions that I think that they may want to have answered. I offer them copies of my books. At the bottom, I have a signature that says, I think I would make a great guest, and I look forward to discussing this with you further. Below that, I have my signature, which includes my phone number, my Skype address, and links to my social media accounts, as well as my author page from Amazon and my YouTube page, because I have recorded myself singing. I've recorded some podcasts that are over there. And so I want them to have all these links. If they're the kind of host who, they just want to read your bio and have you on the show, then fine. They've read my bio in the first paragraph. If they're the kind of show that where the host, where they want to get to really know you, they want to have a conversation, they want to feel like you're their best friend before they even get on the phone with you, then they've got all that. They've got that option in my email. And since it's all copy and paste, I've got a document file in my document section on my computer. It doesn't take me any longer to send them that email than it does to send them a very short email. And I tell you, most of the people doing what I'm talking to you about, they will tell you need to write a very short, very curt, very to the point email. And while that may work for most business applications, it doesn't work for podcasting or radio shows as well, because people don't book you. They don't book your product or service. They book your story. And we are in an age of storytelling. And so when you send an email to somebody trying to get booked on their podcast or radio show or their YouTube channel, that's what they want to know. They want to know what kind of story are their listeners in store for if they have you on their show. So that's the whole thing about the email, the basic pitch letter. I've talked to you a little bit about finding shows, and we talked about the media kit, the As Seen Online page. And I think we could probably spend a few minutes on the technical part of appearing on a show, and then I think Michael wanted me to talk about promoting your appearances. So let's talk about the technical part. A lot of people are afraid because they think they have to have great technology. They think they have to have a headset because I'm wearing one, or because they've seen other people wear them, or because they think that's the only way you can get really good audio or video. That's not true. In general, you can do most podcasts and radio shows from your iPhone or your Android smartphone, or even from an old-fashioned Sprint or Verizon flip phone. The real question is, can you get a good signal, and can you get good audio quality? Do you have the ability to block out noise? In my case, I have a door that has a lock on it, thank goodness. Otherwise, I couldn't be sure if I was going to have the privacy and the noise exclusivity that it takes in order to have a good interview. So, Michael, I know you recently invested in a new headphone, which is a great one. It puts out unbelievable audio quality. And I think you only spent, what was that, about $60 for it, which,
Yeah, 62 US for this new microphone. It's a ATR 2100. Great investment.
Yeah, and the one I've got on is a Plantronics 4300 model. I spent, I didn't spend because it was a Christmas present. It was $40, and I've had it for 5 years now. I mean, I've had it for 4 years. So, as you can tell by the fact that the microphone is kind of bent, that I'm probably due for a new one soon. But you don't have to have the latest technology. If you're going to do video, you can use the video on your laptop or your desktop, or you can. I've got an old DSLR video camera that came with a lead that you can plug into any desktop or laptop, and you get really good video quality. So, but for the most part, you don't need it. For the most part, whether you're hosting or being a guest on a podcast or radio show, you can do it with the technology that's on your phone, your laptop, your tablet. For those of you who have tablets, it's more about the quality of what you have to say and the quality of guests you can get or the quality of guests you will be. It's all about the message and the story more than it is the technology, because as I pointed out to you earlier, you can have a horrible interview. The technology can totally betray you, which it has done to me on many times, and you can still have a great interview. I don't have access to it, but when I did that summit with Alex Accorgi last year, I was having trouble with Blab and my operating system on my laptop. I did that entire interview, which lasted over an hour and a half. I did that entire show with an echo in my head. I was getting audio bounce back, and I was afraid to try to fix it because I didn't want to disappoint her audience. So it was kind of like what you hear people talk about when they do video on a green screen, where you have to act like there's stuff there, but there's nothing there. I had to act like people were hearing me, even though I couldn't hear that they were hearing me. It was horrible. But it's one of the best times I ever had when it was finally over with. So the technology isn't as important as you, your story, your message, and your willingness to share your story is. So that's, and I think, Michael, you agree with me. You've had some good interviews that weren't so great technically, but that's correct.
Yes, I have, and they've turned out to be quite interesting, both technology related and realizations towards the end. Oh, well, this person's not blind.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Michael prefers to interview people who are visually impaired or blind, and he recently did an interview where near the end he found out his guest was not blind. So even beyond technical, you can have personal problems with the guest or host, and I've had those too. I've had interviews where me and the host just didn't click right off the bat. But if you're there to tell your story and share your message, and trust me, nobody knows your story better than you do. So if that's your purpose, then you can get past being with a host who is stiff, or who you're having a language or a problem understanding their accent maybe, or they're calling from Nigeria or New York, or in my case, I was calling from a train once. That didn't turn out too well. So if you're there to share your message, you can get past the technical, you can get past the personal. It's just that you have to be willing to remember that a bad interview can still have a good result, because if even just one person listening to you is affected by you, then it was a good day's work. And I don't know about you, Michael, but I know for me that after I do an interview, whether it's good, bad, awesome, I feel energized. There's just something about talking to people, person to person, voice to voice, that just really energizes me personally in a way that texting, emailing, Facebook messaging, and all that other electronic stuff just doesn't do for me.
Well, and it's talking with people who have the same passions that you have, and that's important. You can go out there and get interviewed by anyone all day long, but you want to make sure you're getting interviewed by, as you know, the right people. And when you're talking with people who are passionate about the same thing, they're going to energize you and inspire you to get out there and be your best.
This is true. And that's why one of the things we do talk about in my online course called On the Air, how to share your story and reach a wider audience, is we talk about how to know when a show is a good show for you, and how to know when it's a good time to tell them thanks but no thanks. So it is about talking to people who are like-minded. And that's the thing, when you're a blogger, you want to leave comments on blogs that have similar niches or similar voices from the host author. When you're doing podcasts as a guest, you want to visit podcasts and radio shows who are hosted by people that you have things in common with, or that you or at least talking about the same subject with the same passion. So that's a good point, Michael. Thanks for reminding me about that. Now, one thing I wanted to get onto, and I wanted to make sure I didn't forget this, because it's a very important point if you're going to do podcasts and radio shows, and that is your job doesn't begin and end with the interview, because I'll be the first to admit I always can do better at this than I have in the past, but it comes down to promoting your appearances. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear this. There are a lot of bloggers who don't like to hear it. Authors, podcast guests, it's the same thing. In order for the appearance to work out for everybody, for you and the host and for the audience, they have to know that you're going to be on the show or that you have been on the show. So it comes down to promoting your appearances. And this is something I like to tell people all the time. If you want to get more appearances, you have to show hosts that you're grateful. And the best way to show your gratitude is to promote your butt off, is to prove to them that you can put feet on the ground, butts in the seats, and faces behind the screens. That's my trademark pending catchphrase, okay? One of many, as you know. But it's seriously, you want to be able to prove to people that you can generate traffic to their podcast. And I know people are thinking, hey, why do this show? I thought the whole point of doing the show was to steal their audience or borrow their audience. Well, that is true. You want to take advantage of an established audience by doing a podcast interview. But the truth is, in order for this thing to really work, you and the host both need to be getting the word out that you're going to be on the show, when you're going to be on the show, what you're going to be talking about. And then when it's over with, you want to be tweeting, putting on Facebook, social media accounts, saying, hey, I was on this podcast. I gave a great interview about this, that, and those. And I really appreciate it if you'd go check it out. Maybe you write a blog post and say, with links or embedded audio player for the show, and make it easy for people to find that show so they can listen to you and the host and get to know both of you a lot better. But you can, like I say, you can write a blog post, you can post on social media. If you have an email list at all, you definitely need to send out an email telling people about this interview. If the interview is posted somewhere where the host receives comments, like many people will post the show episodes to their blog, then you need to go over to the blog and be the first one to leave a comment, even if it's just thank you for having me on the show. And every time somebody else comments on that blog or that podcast feed, you need to be subscribed to it. You need to be there replying to those comments. And because every one of these is an opportunity to connect with somebody else. It's an opportunity to make an impression on these people who are listening, that you're not just there for the attention or the exposure, that you really have a message to share that you believe in, and you want to improve their lives as a process or as a possibility from having been on this show and them having heard your voice, which is one of the reasons why when I do podcast interviews, I make sure that I not only give out my links, which every host will remind you to do. At least every host I've ever been on with has reminded me. Sometimes if they didn't remind me, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have remembered it myself. But beyond that, I like to include my Skype address. I like to include my phone number. And I often include my email address because I don't want people to wonder about, should I hit this guy's contact form or not? Do I have to have a reason? Do I have to want to send him a check to get him to talk to me? And I don't want people thinking about that about me. So promoting on social media, email lists, blog posts, replying to comments on blog posts and podcasts, feeds, sharing to your email list. I'll tell you something I do. It's not something a lot of other people do. Is sharing these events on the social media feeds of your local media outlet groups, like your local newspaper, radio, and TV stations. Because a lot of times, if you're from that area, they may not have you on the news broadcast at noon, but they may repost your post, or they may retweet it, so that's one of those things that I don't do all the time, but it's one of those things that's unusual. You never can tell it where it might lead by doing that. So it looks like I've pretty much it. I don't know who that was, but somebody said 15 till the top of the hour.
That was me, Max. I was trying to interrupt you, and you didn't hear me, so I sent you a private message.
Yeah,
we got 15 minutes to the top of the hour. I was going to ask you a question to transition you real quick, and that question is: you just reviewed 7 different points that people need to make both before and after the interview. How in the heck do you keep all this straight, and how would I, getting into doing interviews, be able to keep something like that straight?
All right. Well, part of the thing you have to remember is if you have a blog, if you have a podcast, let's just say if you have a blog or if you have an author's page like on Facebook or something, a lot of these things to promote this interview are things you should be doing every time you put out new content. Because regardless of where you share your content, like my friend Dave Steele, who's a poet, a very successful poet and author, he shares his stuff on Facebook, but every single time he shares on Facebook, he's also reposting that to Facebook groups. He's also sending that out in emails. These are the kind of things that if you are putting content out there, you should do, or most of it, you should be doing every time you post content. You should be sharing to the major social media networks, which I figure there are 5 of them, being Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Google+. But of course, a lot of people are not at that point in their process. So, you may only be on one social media network. If you are, thank your lucky stars that you were smart not to branch out, because if I could go back to just one social media network, I would do that, just as an aside there. But when you post a new blog post or new content anywhere, you should be mentioning it on the social media network. You should have an email list, which most people do. If you have then you have to reply to those comments. That's just part of the deal, or at least that's the way I see it. Especially since comments are one of the best ways to continue expanding the relationship that you started by posting the content or by doing the interview. So, posting to media groups, that's something I only do in rare occasions. That's not one of the things I would say they have to do all the time. But it really just comes down to how much do you want to get out of the interview. And I know most people are thinking, if I do the interview, I want to do it on shows where they have a huge audience, so I don't have to do anything but show up. Well, unfortunately, even on a show that has a huge audience, I've done shows that have had 50,000 regular listeners. I've done shows that were brand new shows and had 8 listeners. Either way, you still have to promote the appearance, because otherwise the people who are doing those shows can't keep doing them. They can't do all of the promotion by themselves. They need you and their past guests and their current fans to spread the word about the content that they're delivering through their weekly or daily podcast. And if you have to set up a list, if you have to make a file somewhere that says, I'll do these 5 things every time I post a new piece of content, then that's what you have to do. I tell people all the time when they ask me, you're a blogger or you're a podcaster or you're an author, that must be a cushy gig not having to go into work. And I'm like, I just wish they could, I could make a list for them of all the things that us bloggers and podcasters and other creatives have to do in order to make, or even come close to making a living from what you're doing. There's so much other stuff that goes into it, especially in the area of promotion, that I don't think people realize just how hard we are working out here. The podcasters like you, authors like me, show hosts like Frederick. It's different, but it's still hard work.
10 to the hour.
Okay. All righty. Well, I know that many of you might have questions for me, and you're more than welcome to email me at justask@theblindblogger.net after this is over with.
Or you can throw them in the chat here, and I can
you can throw them in the chat
too if you want.
I tell you what, let's think about doing, Michael. How about we finish this show with this next 10 minutes and we'll close the show, but we'll stay online. And then not only can they ask their questions, but we can actually hear their voices. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll promote those who want to be on. We can promote them as panelists and answer their questions if they want to come on live and ask questions.
How about that? I think that would be a good idea. I don't know how many people we've actually got listening, but here I'm gonna finish up these last 10 minutes because I got a special offer I need to make before I forget about it. And after the 10 minutes, when we get to the bottom of the hour or the top of the hour, I'm not one of those big time media guys, so I'm not sure what you say. When we get to the end of the hour, that way I know what I'm talking about. When we get to the end of the hour, we will consider the podcast over, and Michael will stop the record, and then he'll start the record again, just in case. That way we can talk to y'all later whether or not you want to be on the thing. Then we can talk to you on air and have a discussion, and maybe have some other questions get answered after this is over with. I think that sounds like a cool idea, Michael. I hope I'm not stressing you too much.
Oh, I'm used to these crazy things with you. Don't worry.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, one of the things I'm blessed with is that I have friends who have ideas just as crazy, if not crazier, than my own. So thank you for being part of this, Michael. You are a good friend and a brave man. So back to the point I wanted to make. I understand that there's a lot of work that goes into finding shows, pitching shows, following up with show hosts. And so I offer a course that teaches a lot more than what I've talked about here. It's called On the Air: How to Share Your Story, Reach a Wider Audience, and Build Your Brand. It usually costs $97, but if you buy it after this show is over, we're going to sell it to you for $47. However, if you want to hire me as your online media publicist and have me do the work for you, where all you have to do is show up, and then after the interview, promote on social media, because I don't like doing my own social media. I'm not doing anybody else's. So all you have to do is show up, do the interview, and then do the promotion work. If you want to do that, I have a package that I offer. It's I work with you to create a customized personal profile, including photos and all your links on my website. I record with you your first interview. It'll be an hour-long interview. I find the opportunities to go on shows and send out the pitches for you for 90 days for $997. After the 90 days is up, if you want to continue with me, then it's $200 a month to continue sending out pitches on your behalf. I do take payments on that first $1,000, 3 payments of $350 per month. However, as a special offer today, and for anybody who views this podcast over the next 48 hours, since it is going to be live for a couple of days, if you will sign up with me between now and let's say by May 17th. I'm picking that day because it's my dad's birthday. It's also the day before I do my first public talk in Philadelphia or New Jersey, depending on which geography you're asking about. If you do that in the next couple of weeks, let's say between now and the 17th, I'll cut that in half. It'll be $500 or $497. Your 3 payments will be $175 a month. The first payment doesn't come in until after I create your profile and you say, that's good, I like it. And I will get you at least 3 opportunities per month. I say that because a lot of times there's a time lag between pitching a show and actually getting to appear on it and then having the show go live. So sometimes, even with shows I've been on where I can reach out to past hosts and go, hey, you need to have so-and-so on your show, it may still be a few days to a few weeks before you actually get to do that show. So I feel like I can comfortably guarantee at least 3 audio and one text appearance per month if somebody is into me guaranteeing them a specific minimum. All I can say is, for the most part, is I do my best. I get up every morning to find as many opportunities that are good fits for my clients, to send out those emails and get them booked. And I have this page on my website. I have 2 pages. One is called Online Publicity at theblindblogger.net. The other is called Success Stories. And there's about 12 people on there who I've been working for over the last 6 months to a year, depending on which one you look at. you're more than welcome to contact any of those people and ask them for their opinion on my services and how it is to work with me on getting media exposure through podcasts, radio shows, and other things like YouTube videos and etc. So I made the offer, $1,000 for the first 90 days, or half off if you subscribe because you saw the webinar. If you don't want to hire me, but you still want to learn more about this, half off on the course, which makes it $47, I think. And if you want to hang around after the next few minutes, we're going to open it up to questions and let some of y'all come on with us and be panelists. So I know I'm past the hour, Mike. I have that problem. I talk longer than I need to. But I want to thank you. I want to make sure I don't forget to thank you for sponsoring the webinar, for talking me through this whole process, for getting me on Zoom in the first place, and for really giving me the freedom to talk about this stuff and not have to worry about the tech end of it while I tell people what it is I do and how they can benefit from doing it for themselves too.
Well, you're welcome, Max, and I got to congratulate you. Look at the time. Look at that time. You did not hit an hour, but you are just barely under it. So,
all righty, well, good.
And the link.
Don't forget to mention yourownpay.com because Michael offers a course where he can walk you through this process of getting your first webinar.
Well, let me step back there, Max. I don't have that course out yet. It's coming out.
Okay. Well,
but now I have to put it out.
Sign up to his email list, and that way you'll know as soon as the course goes live.
There you go. So everyone knows I put the link to the Max's course that is half off, $47 right now. It's there in the chat, and when you leave Zoom, it's also going to appear in your default browser on your computer. So go ahead and check that course out. I helped Max get that into Thinkific, and it goes over a lot of the content that he went over today. I'm sure he'll I'm sure he'll have me throw this recording into Thinkific as a bonus for people who are interested in that course as well. So.
Well, absolutely. We'd love for them to have the opportunity to go back and listen to this at their leisure.
Exactly. So, unless you have anything else, we can go ahead and wrap this up, and I'll end the recording, and then whoever stays on can be promoted to a panelist, and we can chat with them. So,
sounds good.
All right, let me go ahead and end this recording. Thanks for joining us, and we appreciate it. Oh, and visit yourownpay.com and theblindblogger.net. Sorry, I'm horrible at self-promotion, and you know that.
Well, I think I mentioned both websites quite often, so we're good. We're good.
Right.